Baker.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Mr. Lasowitz, I can't resist saying that you provided us all with at least a half a dozen titles for books or novels.
Well, that was not my intent, Senator. It was just to present it as an
Caper, you know, the whole...
Anthony Ulasewicz provides the committee with some of its more uproarious moments.
I will pay for it, that's for sure.
Yeah.
The newspapers will have a ball with this one.
Who thought you up? I mean, who first?
Well, I don't know, but they taught me to... Maybe my parents' fault.
Yeah, well...
I'd like to have your concept, and I think this is very much, now we're getting into the real essence of the business of this committee.
Senator Weicker probes John Ehrlichman.
Well, what is your concept of political information? You see, unfortunately, thanks to the committee to re-elect the president and some of the witnesses that have appeared here, everybody thinks that the senators at this table and others engaged in politics go running around hiring Ulasewicz types to dig up dirt on each other. And I just can't allow that to fly without contesting it, because really it's going to make elections rather interesting in the future if it does. And I wonder if you might, since you were the one that was responsible for hiring this man, and since we've had a description of by this man of exactly what his job consisted of, which was dirt, I wonder if you might tell the committee what your concept is of politics here in the United States insofar as this type of activity is concerned.
Well, I think that certainly there is room for improvement in the practice of politics in this country. There's no argument about that. But at the same time, I think that each candidate who contests the candidacy of an incumbent has the obligation to come forward and contest the fitness of that incumbent for office, both in terms of his voting record and in terms of his probity and in terms of his morals, if you please, and any other fact that is important or germane to the voters of his district or state, or the country for that matter. I think a candidate for office assumes that burden of proof. He assumes a burden of proof of showing the unfitness of the incumbent. And I don't think that in our political system that is limited to his voting record or his absenteeism.
Do you mean to tell me, in this committee, that you consider private investigators going into sexual habits, drinking habits, domestic problems, and personal social activities as a proper subject for investigation during the course of a political campaign?
Senator, I know of my own knowledge of incumbents in office who are not discharging their obligation to their constituents because of their drinking habits. You can go over here in the gallery and watch a member totter onto the floor in a condition which of at least partial inebriation, which would preclude him from making any sort of a sober judgment on the issues that confront this country. Now, I think that is important for the American people to know, and if the only way that it can be brought out is through his opponent in a political campaign, then I think that opponent has an affirmative obligation to bring that forward.
Well, now this is getting very interesting. Do you really want to bring the political system of the United States, of our campaigns, down to the level of what you're talking about right now?
Well, I conceive of it this way, Senator. I know that in your situation, your lifestyle is undoubtedly impeccable, and there wouldn't be anything at issue like that.
I'm no angel. I'm no angel, but I'll tell you what, I might.
I thought you were.
Believe me, I'm not. And I worry about you sticking people on the landscape here. I've probably got a greater worry now that I've heard about this than I did before I started it. I'll put it that way.
Well, I think you'll agree with me, Senator, that certainly someone with a serious drinking habit is of doubtful fitness for the kind of heavy duties that you bear, for instance, or that any senator bears in the Senate of the United States. That is certainly a material question that has to be raised in a political campaign, at least so it seems to me. Now, if that is not something that the incumbent's opponent should bring out, then you are leaving the constituency to the tender mercies of the journalists in the community as to whether or not that's reported to the constituency, because they don't have any way of knowing, really, especially the constituencies remote from here, where people get here very seldom to make an observation. So I would be very concerned about that, and that seems to me to be a very legitimate subject of inquiry. Now, maybe my standards are all haywire, and that everybody in the Congress ought to be immune from scrutiny on that subject. But that just seems to me to be an indefensible position on your part.
You think that we have no scrutiny around here?
Sir?
You think we have no scrutiny?
Well, in all candor,
let's count them. I mean, they're all over here at this stage of the game, and they're here all the time, not just to hear you and I talk. If there's anything that is quite obvious in Washington, D.C., it's that every aspect of our lives, legislatively, personally, in every way, is subject to the scrutiny of the free press, and subject to the scrutiny, at least the Congress is subject to the scrutiny of the free press. And also subject to the scrutiny of our constituencies. Our wives, right.
Senator Gurney, described as the committee member most favorable to the White House, tangles with Sam Ervin over what he terms harassment of witnesses by the chairman.
American public, I don't think, understands how these committee hearings are conducted. And I don't want them to get the impression that the questioning of any senator here is found favor by other senators. And I, for one, have not appreciated the harassment of this witness by the chairman in the questioning that is just finished. I think this Senate committee ought to act in fairness.
Well, I have not questioned the veracity of the witness. I've asked the witness some questions to find out what the truth is.
I use the word harassment.
The what? Harassment?
Harassment. H-A-R-A-S-S-M-E-N-T.
Well, I'm sorry that my distinguished friend from Florida does not approve of my method of examining the witness. I'm an old country lawyer, and I don't know the fine ways to do it. I just have to do it my way.
I didn't say I approved or disapproved, Mr. Chairman.
If the senator will
I
yield
just
for
wanted
a
to
moment.
The chairman is fond of pointing out from time to time that he is just a country lawyer. He omits to say that he graduated from Harvard Law School with honors.
If the solicitor from Tennessee will yield, I'd like to say a word in my own defense on that point. I had a friend introduce me to North Carolina audience. He'd say he understood I was a graduate of Harvard Law School, but thank God nobody would ever suspect it.
In the course of all of our testimony, to the extent that we have conflicts in it, I'm reminded of an old lawyer in Scott County, Tennessee, named Haywood Pemberton, who was employed to defend a man, and he said, "I just shot a man, Haywood, will you defend me?" And he said, "Of course I'll defend you. Did you kill him?" He said, "No, I just wounded him." And he said, "Well, that's all right, but just remember he'll be an awful hard witness against you."
That's all right.
Mr. Chairman, I regret I have no Hawaiian stories to tell.
I was handed a book written by Woodrow Wilson, The New Freedom During the Noon Hour, written in 1913, 60 years ago.
Senator Herman Talmadge.
I read from page 111. chapter 6, let there be light. The concern of patriotic men is to put our government again on its right basis by substituting the popular will for the rule of guardians. The processes of common counsel for those of private arrangement. In order to do this, a first necessity is to open the doors and let in the light on all affairs which the people have a right to know about. In the first place, it is necessary to open up all of the processes of our politics. They have been too secret, too complicated, too roundabout. They have consisted too much of private conferences and secret understanding.
The issue of the White House tapes and the president's refusal to turn them over to the committee draws a comment from Senator Ervin.
This is a rather remarkable note about the tapes. If you notice, the president says he's heard the tapes, or some of them, and they sustain his position. But he says he's not going to let anybody else hear them, for fear they might draw a different conclusion.
Anthony Ulasewicz comments about some of the problems he had delivering the money to Mrs. Hunt.
How were you traveling during this period of time?
By airplane, Eastern Airlines shuttle usually.
And did you ever change your mode of travel? Did you have a problem on the planes?
Well, there was a period of time when, of course, with the hijacks and all, they started a searching system on various airlines, and that was a little problem. And I got in the line one time to go back. It was when I had probably only about 50,000 at this time. And a fellow in front of me, 2 or 3 persons in front of me, was stopped and had to produce, I think, 4 packs of cigarettes or something, set off the alarm. So I went into a coughing fit, and I went down to Pennsylvania Railroad and took the train home.
CRP Treasurer Hugh Sloan explains to Senator Ervin how he asked John Mitchell for advice, and Mitchell's response.
I guess what I was hoping for was an explanation that everything was all right. I did get no such guidance.
And the only advice you got on the subject was a philosophical observation that when the going gets tough, the tough get going.
Yes, sir.
I don't quite understand it all, but...
I didn't really understand
How long was it after that before Mr. Mitchell left the committee?
Senator, I must admit that when I received news of Mr. Mitchell's departure when I was in Bermuda, that same thought did cross my mind as well.
How long have you lived in Washington?
I've been here about 10 years.
And you don't know the difference between the Washington Hilton and the Mayflower Hotel?
I continually get them confused, I must confess.
John Dean's memory is the subject of this exchange between Dean and Senator Gurney about the site of a meeting between Dean and Herbert Kalmbach, President Nixon's personal attorney.
Well, I must say, I am reminded of your colloquy with the chairman yesterday, Mr. Dean, when you said what an excellent memory you had, right from school days right on down, and that's why you were able to reconstruct.
I feel my memory is good, but I confuse some names often. I don't pretend to have a perfect memory. I think I have a good memory, Senator.
But you can't remember really now, after testifying 3 times very positively, whether it was the Statler Hilton or the Mayflower.
Well, Senator, the point in substance here is the fact that the meeting did occur. We met in the coffee shop. We went from the coffee shop to his room. We had an extended discussion of the matter, and that is very clear in my recollection, the substance of the event. I might just go back to one point. The name of the coffee shop at the Statler Hilton is the Mayflower. Well,
please refrain from applause or demonstrating their reaction to any testimony.
Is that what your attorney just told you?
Yes, he did.
His memory apparently is much better than yours.
Now, going back to your original concepts of public service and the motivations which moved you into this spectrum, and then subsequently your soldierly obedience to instructions from your superiors, and your fall into the Watergate pit.
Senator Montoya questions Gordon Strachan about his advice to young people considering a career in politics.
What advice do you have for these young people? I believe they want to hear from you. Now, will you expound on that?
Well, may not be the type of advice that you could look back and want to give, but my advice would be to stay away.
Just I think you've answered it very well.